Budget Day is coming up on the 7th of October and it always dominates the agenda around this time. Housing continues to be a real topical area. What's expected for people in this regard?
We don't expect any major, massive changes in the budget on the 7th of October. Unlike previous years where there were a little bit giveaway budgets, housing obviously is still a big area for the government and they're still under a lot of pressure. But whilst they have done a few things in the last few years in relation to things like the rental tax credit, for example, and obviously certain government schemes, the Help to Buy scheme particularly, which they've extended, the only thing that we can see happening is that the rental tax scheme is due to expire at the end of the year. And there was talk recently that the government may look to extend that. But other than that, there's no major provision, unfortunately, for those that are still struggling to get onto the housing ladder.
And in terms of cost of living, it's a real problem for people at the moment. I mean, we see it. I mean, I see it myself in going grocery shopping. But energy tax credits and things like this, do you think that they will provide relief for people in this area?
Yeah, we have seen like obviously a big increase in the cost, particularly in relation to things like energy. And I've noticed that even myself personally. But again, I think the government are going to probably concentrate more on the broader area rather than specific reliefs for any particular type of householder. We might get some credits, but again, I wouldn't expect anything too significant. And it's going to be really just maybe small amounts rather than anything too wide ranging.
So I'm wondering, is this going to be a giveaway budget or not? Because like tax obviously is another big issue, and we're paying a lot of tax in this country. So will there be any tax changes expected?
There really isn't anything expected. And I think that has been kind of fairly been announced that the government aren't going to look to change any of the tax bands. Obviously, at the moment, we are still suffering that 52% effective rate for those earning over 44,000 a year. We have the 40% high rate, of course, and then the dreaded USC and PRSI. And USC was only supposed to be a temporary tax, but obviously it has now remained kind of part of the fabric of the Irish tax system. What we will see more likely is probably a slight widening of the tax band so that you may be able to earn a little bit more before you start paying tax at that higher rate. But that's only really going to take effect really to allow for the effect of inflation.
And
We're not really be much better off.
Last year they were alluding to, deemed disposal tax being amended, but it never happened. So what's the situation here?
Yeah, this is one that for me as a saver, like I'm saving into a child savings plan, that the life assurance companies like the likes of Zurich and Aviva and so on offer these types of savings plans, which many parents have and even many individuals. And one of the downsides is that it does suffer from a tax rate of 41%, the so-called deemed disposal. The tax is taken then up to 8 years or at withdrawal. And there is also the 1% government levy on these types of plans. This is also affects things like ETFs that a lot of people are now looking to invest in, particularly the kind of the culture on social media. So Michael McGrath, who before he left for the European office last year, did do a paper which was taken over by Jack Chambers, obviously the current finance minister. And we are hoping that that may also be affected in the budget, which would be a big thing for the industry and particularly for savers in those types of plans.
So at the moment it's 41%. What are they hoping that it'll be reduced to?
In line with capital gains tax, which is 33%. So that's really the area that we're looking at quite closely. I personally don't think it will be taken into account. It's a nice revenue earner for the government, of course, and it's something that has kind of slightly gone into the background rather than being at the forefront of people's minds.
And again, then business owners, SMEs, a lot of them are struggling to keep their businesses running and going in this climate. What's on the horizon for them? Obviously, with auto-enrolment or the mandatory pension scheme being introduced on the 1st of January, are there any reliefs for business owners?
As a business owner myself, of course, it has been difficult. I mean, we have seen, obviously, that we've had cost rises. Obviously, we mentioned about things like energy costs, for example, that affect businesses. We've seen minimum wage increases that has affected a lot of businesses, particularly in the hospitality area. And now this introduction of this government pension scheme on the 1st of January in 26, which will be a cost of 1.5% for pretty much all employees, which is going to affect about 800,000 people in Ireland. We are giving advice to companies, and we are talking to businesses at the moment about how they can mitigate against the cost of auto enrollment. I do think it's an area that businesses should really be focused on, and also try and accept it as part of the nature of running a business. The only thing in the space, really, I suppose, particularly for hospitality, is that they may reduce the VAT rate back down to 9%, which obviously was something that they've been making a lot of noise about. Again, I'm not convinced that the government will affect that. The government are looking to try and raise the coffers for what they perceive to be times where the Ireland isn't as wealthy as it is today. And I do think it's going to be more of a conservative budget than we've seen.
And if there was anything for people to look out for, is there anything that you would kind of suggest?
The one area for parents, possibly that may help, particularly for those with very young children, is the extension of the free child preschool care. I think they're looking to extend that by an hour, which is worth quite a lot of money to parents. They may do other small little giveaways, but what I say to people at this time is that, generally speaking, even if you're only slightly marginally better off, just think about what you might do with that saving. We've seen over the last couple of budgets, we've all been better off typically from January, which is when a lot of these effects take place, to the tune of about 50 to 100 euros a month. And yet many of us didn't really take any accountance to that. It's always worth just re-looking at your finances, seeing if there is any savings that you make. Obviously, the news makes it quite clear, and there's some really good information that's available, obviously, on budget day to assess, whether you're better or worse off, and that maybe using that to better effect, putting into a savings account, for example, looking at your pension, and maybe just having a general financial review with somebody just to kind of, check in and see where you are in terms of your financial objectives.
Great. Well, I think that's kind of summed up what we're kind of due to expect, which doesn't seem like a huge amount in this year's budget, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, look, it's all small improvements. And I think the important thing is that I don't think anyone's going to be worse off, which is important because budgets can go in the opposite direction. We all want them to obviously make a positive impact on us. But what we don't want to see is any introductions of any additional taxes or indeed, things that are going to really affect us. As I said, business owners are the ones that are probably going to be most impacted, certainly by auto enrollment. But there are ways in which we can help people mitigate. And I think it's important for people to get out and seek advice independently, of course.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. Thanks.